perfectly. Now, while I've been chatting away, I hadn't noticed that drip, so definitely want to lose that. Hi everyone, I'm Mike, and this is the Sunday Art Show. In this week's video, I want to kind of progress an idea that I came up with the other week. You may remember, if you watch the channel regularly, you may remember that I converted this little plein air Sharpie sketch of a horse grazing into this rather colourful little painting, lots of vibrant purple, and then I've got a rather subdued background, and the idea with this background, these vertical stripes, actually represented in a very, very abstract, simplified way the background landscape turned on its side. So I had the sky here, and then these other colours represent the colours of the fields. So for my plan for this week's video is to kind of move that idea forward in a bit more of a sophisticated way and with more of a finished painting. All right, so I'm going to try and keep my drawing nice and loose and gestural. But at the same time, my hope is to keep the proportions of the animal reasonably accurate. So I've just started out with the right hand ear of the steer on the right. And then having added in the other ear, we can begin to include some of the structure of the head. Now I don't want to do too many details here, because when I add the watercolor later, I want to let that do its own thing to a certain extent, and with that in mind, really all I want is a fairly loose but descriptive outline. A rough framework for me to add the watercolor to. And then hopefully, things might go a little bit wild with the watercolor. It'll create some nice cauliflowers or edge effects. We'll see what happens. But the idea is to create something which, I couldn't do by simply being super accurate with my drawing. So it's meant to be a balance between having things pretty well proportioned and getting the lines, pretty accurate, and then a little bit of sort of free flowing randomness, which I'm hoping the watercolor is going to introduce. So I've got a rough silhouette of the first animal down, so now I can use a similar technique to begin to place the second of the two steer. And one of the things I think is really cool about drawing cattle is the way they move and interact with each other, because obviously they're herd animals, and they're always sort of peeking. They're either standing side by side, or they're peeking out from behind each other, or bustling one another, shoving one another to the side. So the patterns they make, as a herd, they're always evolving and changing, and it's far more interesting from my point of view than just drawing a single animal, as much as I enjoy doing that fairly regularly. So I've got the hind legs of this first animal here. Oh no, hang on, no, that's not. No, sorry, the animal's so dark that it's actually pretty immersed in shadow. So I think that's actually part of the chest of this second animal. And yeah, I think it is. And then that comes down here, and then the hind legs of the first animal kind of peek out around about there. And then the forelegs of this second animal come down a bit lower. or at least one of them does. One of them's there. Then we've got the other leg. Coming down here, let's go back to this one. Okay, so we've got two cattle placed, on the paper. Now the bottoms of the legs here are going to kind of disappear off frame, but I don't mind that when I'm painting animals. I like things to be, I don't want them to be too artificially posed, so it's almost as if these two cattle have just wandered into the frame of my painting. Alright, well you can see I've turned the painting, or the drawing at the moment, on its side, and I'm going to, as mentioned earlier, explore this idea of having a landscape in the background turned on its side and then the animals the other way up. So I've got my watercolor palette here, and I've got some cobalt blue, some magenta and some cadmium yellow. So let's get just got the surface of the paper fairly moist, and I've got a bit of water in the well here. This is a synthetic sable flat brush, which I haven't actually used before. So we'll see how that works for the watercolor. And I'm just going to begin with a little bit of the cobalt blue. Let's put some of that on and see what happens. Now I'm working with the paper pretty much vertical, so that creates this lovely bead of colour, which you can see kind of weeps into the pre-wetted area of the paper. And I'm obviously going to get some trickles running across the drawing, but I'm not too worried about those. I'm going to mop those up a bit later on. And in addition, because these animals are very, very dark, I think the highlights are probably going to be darker than this background colour. But the other reason I've got the paper vertical is I love the sort of granulation and running marks you get as the wash works its way down the page. And what I want to do is kind of see what that's going to look like as a background, once things are turned 90 degrees. So let's just wet that lower part of that wash a little bit there to keep it moving. And then I'm going to grab some more of the cobalt blue. There we go. And let's put a little bit of the magenta in this time. And I put in way, way more than I intended there. So we'll grab a bit more of the blue. And there are a few clouds in the sky. It's a pretty cloudy sky in my reference. Let's just keep that wet. So let's see what happens if we sort of suggest the presence of something, a little bit of overcast weather in the sky here with this flat brush. So the other thing I can do is roll the brush like that, which is something I quite like doing for clouds and plant life. Create some nice random textures which are difficult to replicate in another way. Looks like I've got a stray hair there. There we go. So let's